This podcast contains potentially adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly sexual context. Listener discretion is advised. Okay, welcome to Drinking with Authors, the podcast. I am your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today is the phenomenal C.R. Rice. Yay. And our guest today is DJ Butler. Woo! Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking. I actually, this is what's happening. You can only see this if you do our YouTube. Okay, but what's in that is I made sort of white Russians, but I used chocolate milk. I don't know if those are chocolate Russians, but I think I should call it that. So anyway, that happened. CR, what are you drinking?
I ran out of like Dr. Pepper, so it's like a mix of like Pepsi and Coke, which I'm sure is going to spark a debate in rum.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Well done. DJ, what are you drinking for the audience to follow along with?
So this is just straight Coke, I'm afraid. I put it into a glass with ice cubes so you might imagine it's got some Jack or something in it, but it doesn't. It's just Coca-Cola.
I'm imagining that it has Jack with it, so that's what I'm going to do.
I'm going to stick with the rum. That way we can like be drink buddies.
We're drink buddies. You get that?
We're drink buddies.
Drink buddies. That was a weird gesture for drink buddies, CR, but I'm letting it go. Okay, so stop doing it. Let's talk a little bit about what you write. So, DJ, what do you write for those that may not know you?
Boy, that's a good question. I write a lot of stuff. I think of myself principally as a fantasy writer, and I'm mostly published. My main publisher is Baen Books. So I've got some epic fantasy and sort of, and some urban fantasy sort of, and a kind of a science fantasy sort of. I do have a straight science fiction novel with them coming out next year. I've written dystopian science fiction published by WordFire Press. I even have a contemporary young adult thriller. It's kind of Nancy Drew meets Longmire. And actually, I should say, as Dave Butler. So I'm DJ here, but as Dave Butler, I've got a Random House trilogy published by Knopf Books for Young Readers, which is a steampunk action fantasy retelling of Pinocchio. So I'm all over the place.
Yeah, I would say you are just a plethora. That's not even how you say that correctly.
Would you say
plethora? Do you see how I did that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what made you decide you wanted to go down this particular job line? I'm going to be right.
Yeah. Let me take a drink to steady myself before I answer that.
I would. I am too. I'm taking a drink to unsteady myself. So
I thought I was going to be a writer for a long time, and I chickened out, and then I got around to it again. So that's the 30,000 foot headline. So let me give you some detail.
Okay.
My dad, he's retired now, but he was a professor, and when he used to travel, and I was younger, he doesn't do this anymore because I'm like, I live on my own now. But when I was a kid.
It's a good thing. Okay. We're making progress.
Free zone
We're
here.
doing good.
I'm not in my parents' basements, if you're wondering. But when I was a kid, he would travel to conferences, academic conferences kind of things. And he'd bring back gifts for the kids.
Okay.
And so when I was in, I think it must have been second grade, he brought back the 25th anniversary. And I'm holding my hand up here and inviting you to imagine a little box of books, okay? The 25th anniversary Silver Jubilee paperback edition of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. With the Daryl K. Street covers, The Hobbit was yellow, the trilogy was blue, green, and red, all bound up in this kind of fake gold foil, box. And I basically put myself into bed and didn't get out for a week until I almost lit my bed on fire. I fell asleep, had a little headlamp that clipped with a kind of a flexible neck that clipped onto the headboard. And I fell asleep at like 2 a.m, woke up and the lamp had fallen forward and burned a perfect circle right out of my pillow.
Oh, wow.
Pillowcase, rather, right? So.
Well, that's unsettling.
Yeah, but it did not deter me. It's the kind of hardship I was willing to.
Near-death experiences for The Hobbit. Go.
That's correct. So I thought I was going to be a writer. through the rest of my, sort of education. I thought this is what I'm going to do. And specifically, I'm going to write fantasy, right? And I want to be Tolkien. And I spent years doing what I think a lot of fantasy writers, Erica and Sierra, I don't know what you write. And I don't know.
I do fantasy. I do young adult fantasy right now.
Okay, fantastic.
I write horror, and under a different name, I write chick lit humorous erotica.
Okay, very good.
But go ahead. I'm a huge Tolkien fan and gaming nerd, but go ahead, tell us what you did.
Well, I think what I think a lot of fantasy writers and readers did, I kept trying to find Tolkien again. Like I spent years sort of trying to replicate that experience, and I think writers at the time were doing it too. So you read the first Terry Brooks novel, Sword of Shannara. It's a blatant. It's a Tolkien fanfic published in one volume, and there are others. So I thought that was what I was going to do. And then I got into college and decided and met this girl, and we wanted to get married, and she didn't want to be poor. That seemed fair, so I went to law school instead. Right.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So for I don't know, 15 years or something, I had thought I'm going to be a fantasy writer, maybe an academic of some kind who writes fantasy, and I punted and went to law school.
That's a giant leap. That is like completely opposite. If you think about I want to be a fantasy writer. Screw it, I'm going into law. Like, what made you make that leap?
Hold on. I was going to say that's not a huge leap, because I've read a lot of legal documents and they're fantasy. Different kind of fantasy, but they're fantasy.
Yeah. I know, and the order is reversed, right? Usually you sell out late in your career. I sold out in the beginning. Vile lucre was the thing that made me do it. Although it's interesting. Terry Brooks, actually, speaking of Terry Brooks, had been a lawyer.
Melinda Snodgrass. She was a lawyer.
So is Melinda Snodgrass. Yeah.
Yep.
So and others, and actually all the way back through like Dickens and Chaucer, like a lot of writers have had a connection of some kind to the legal profession. And I'm not justifying what I did. I mean, I wanted to have a family, right? And it's what I did. So I practiced law for 11 years, and I kept writing, but mostly. So in high school, what did I write? I mean, I wrote short stories, and I wrote a really bad novel that I'm pretty sure does not exist even in digital copy, right? I think that is gone truly, and that's for the better. But for during law school and for the 11 years of me practicing law full time, I still wrote, but other stuff. I wrote a lot of songs. I play guitar. I do home recording. I wrote a lot of songs. I would do things like write an album of songs for my nieces and nephews, one song for each of them, and record it for Christmas and mail it to them, kind of thing. I wrote screenplays that I mailed off to Hollywood studios, which that one never went anywhere. I think you have to basically be in LA, or the odds are like better that you'll get killed by a meteorite than you'll sell a script to anybody.
That's probably true. Yes.
Yeah. So and then in 2010, so I'd been practicing law for 11 years. I got a very a fantastic bit of luck, a really good break, which is to say the company where I was one of the senior lawyers was sold, and I had the opportunity to take kind of an extended sabbatical and do whatever I wanted, and for a while, not forever, but for a while. And so I wrote, and with my second book, I picked up an agent, and then my wife Emily said, "Well, you can do this. It can't be that hard." So we wrote a book together. She got her own agent, so it became kind of our family business. She's got 2 books out with a Random House imprint too, and kind of never looked back. I've been experimenting. I mean, I'm happy to tell stories of various kinds to all kinds of readers, and I've been trying to find markets, right? So I've written contemporary YA thriller, and I've written stuff for kids. But the fact is, where my heart always was writing fantasy for adult readers or science fiction, and that's mostly what I'm doing now. I'm working as a corporate trainer by day, and actually I have a wide range of other weird things I do. Kind of have a portfolio career, this, that, and the other at this point, including even a little bit of law. But I, I've got 14 novels out now, and a bunch of short stories and novellas, and I feel very lucky. I didn't think this is where it was going to go when I was 8, but it's working out.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So you go on this thing, 14 books in what period of time?
So, I mean, I wrote from like 2010 to 2012 or so full time, which was great because I had to really teach myself how to write a novel. I'd done lots of other kinds of writing, legal documents, wrote a lot of prospectuses and contracts and other things. I'd been doing songwriting, which was really good training, and some scripts. Had to learn how to write a novel. So my first novel was, my second novel was the one in high school, right? But my first 2010, again, crap. But then I kind of figured it out, right? And the second one got an agent.
What happened with the first one?
What was wrong with it?
No, what happened to it?
Oh, I sent it out to agents and nobody responded at all.
So is it shelved? Did you self-publish it? What do you do with it now?
Yes. I think it will probably end up being available in the archive of my paper someday. It is pretty bad. I wouldn't want to like put it out. I also kind of don't want to edit it, in the sense that I want to leave it as a document for like, this is what
you've grown.
Yeah, right. This is what Dave thought was a good novel when he was, trying to jumpstart this whole writing thing.
So I feel like you're avoiding the question of what it was called, because like I really want to deep Google you. So like, what was it called?
I don't remember.
So he's put in mental blocks. Okay, we'll move on because
I'll try and think. Yeah.
Mental blocks to what's happening there. Okay, so you start this, which is awesome that you got the opportunity to do this. Have you been traditionally published this entire time, basically?
So I picked up an agent in 2000, very beginning of 2012. Is that right? No, 2011. So I've been trying it for about 8 months. First novel was crap. Second novel picked up an agent, fairly big name, head of a kind of mid-sized literary firm. And he sent the book out. We got some near misses, and we kind of kept talking, and I sent him other things, and it was really clear that I was writing a lot faster than he was reading. To say I was he couldn't guarantee a sale for me. He was willing to kind of try me once in a while, but I wasn't going to get any real attention. And his suggestion, he said, you got a lot of energy. You should go ahead and self-publish and stuff. So actually, that's my first publications are that I started self-publishing during my time with First Agent. I started and this is actually why I started using the name, because the first thing I published is an urban fantasy novella serial called Rock Band Fights Evil. My actual initials are DJ, David John, and I said DJ sounds right for a rock band. So, and then just kind of stuck. Until then, no one ever called me DJ in my life. So.
And now everybody does at convention.
And now everybody, yeah. And I have to remember, hey DJ, and I'm like, oh wait, that's me. yeah. So I started self-publishing that while he was my agent. Then after about month 11, month 12 of him being my agent, he sent me an email copying his lawyer saying, I don't have time for you, and then blocked me. Although interestingly did not remove me from his mailing list. So I still to this day get emails from him about his jazz guitar performances. So yeah, that, agent. So for a while, I thought I was going to be exclusively self-published, which, is way more of an option. Increasingly, like day to day, it's a bigger, better option than it was in 2010 or 2000 or 1950, right? I mean, it's just, so I thought, okay, well, this is where it's going to go. And some of the things I had written during my time when I was represented by agent number one, I started putting out. So I had a couple other novels self-published, continued putting out some of the rock band stuff. So interestingly, here's just kind of who listens to, do writers mostly listen to this? Is writers kind of
all kinds of people? I was actually at my what, I don't know what to call it, that it's a spa where I get waxing done, and I was walking out of said spa and I made my appointment, and one of the girls working there goes, "Hey Erica, I listened to your podcast the other day." Not a writer. "I listened to your podcast the other day, and like there's, it's drinking with authors, but there is a lot of drinking." And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "It was pretty funny." And I was like, "Thanks." She's like, "Yeah, no, I listen to it on my way home all the time now." And I'm like, "Cool.
Okay.
I'll take that." And moving on. And I walked out going, what a weird conversation. Like, it's literally called Drinking with Others. But anyway, so I think we have a mixture of writers, and we talk about writing on the show and stuff like that, but we're entertaining. And so then it's funny to hear kind of life stories. Yeah. It's like the Kardashians without all the bullshit. Yeah. So go ahead.
Okay, so here's in the spirit of that, like the Kardashians. So here's kind of a story that like a writer might find either inspiring or infuriating. Okay. And maybe for other listeners, it'll be sort of gee whiz. So in my sort of between agents time, because I later get another agent. Okay. In my between agents time, one of the books I had written and that my agent had looked at and given me one round of comments on is an epic fantasy novel called Witchy Eye. Okay. And like, I really felt strongly about this book. I really like this, still do really like this book. And so I actually got offers to publish that. But they were offers that I didn't want to take because they wanted too much changes, or they said, we want, hey, rewrite it for YA and break it into 3 parts, and I didn't want to do it. Didn't want to do any of this stuff. So as soon as my agent dumped me, I sent it out to fantasy publishers, many of whom will take unsolicited manuscripts, unrepresented manuscripts, right?
Yeah.
Including to Toni Weisskopf at Baen, whom I had met and knew. She's the chief editor-in-chief and publisher at Baen. I had met her at Worldcon 4 months previously, and I sent her the book. She said, "Well, it may not be a good fit for us." So it's February 2012 when I sent her that manuscript. Okay. So we're going to this is like the plant. We're going to have a payoff in a bit here. Okay. So
we're on the journey. We're all with you. It's your podcast.
On the journey, and we're all drinking. So I self-publish some stuff, and including I get ready to self-publish this kid's book, the steampunk Pinocchio book. It's called The Kidnap Plot. And I send it out to a last few rounds of agents, and one of them says, so I've been trying to find agents in the meantime, and I send this out to a kind of a last round of agents, and one of them says, "Hey, let me take a look at this, maybe." So I was on the verge of self-publishing. It was formatted for Amazon. I had bought a cover. She says, "Hold on." And I say, "Okay." She reads it, comes back a month later. It says, "I'm going to send this on a sneak preview to some to one editor, and then I'll send it out." Well, the one editor bought it. So Nicole Fry is an editor at Knopf, Books for Young Readers. She actually, like, Aragon is her biggest series that you probably heard of Aragon, but like a bunch of others, Carl Hyacin and the Emerald Atlas and Wonder is the other enormous one, right? You recall that was everywhere about 4 years ago. So so she picks me up. That book comes out. When does it come out? I can't remember. What, like 2018 or something. So okay, so now I've got an agent, and I think I got an agent. I got a Random House deal. I won. From here, it's all gold paved streets and like rose petals thrown in my path, right? Cherubs blowing trumpets wherever I go. So
your own theme song following you around literally everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah, a little kid with a harmonica playing Ennio Morricone themes.
As soon as you step out your door. To just let the world know you're there.
That's what I thought. That's the deal, right? That's what you think you're going to get. So
legitimately, every author should think this.
Yeah. So that turned out not to be the reality. I mean, what happened with Random House is Michelle is lovely. She did a lovely editing job. They did a lovely covers. All the 2.5 years before the book came out, I kept saying, let's talk about marketing. She said, yes, we're going to talk about marketing, but wait, don't do anything. I sent her a marketing plan. She said, don't do this stuff. Wait, we're going to tell you the plan. Right up to, we finally had the call with the VP of marketing, might not have been called VP, the marketing person, whatever her title was, like 3 weeks before the book came out. And I got
3 weeks before the book came out.
Great, I'm excited to hear the plan. What's the plan? And they said, we're going to do librarian outreach. And I said, well, what is that? And they said, well, actually, we're not 100% sure. We'll get back to you, which they never did. I said, great, what else? And they said, that's it. So the books were utterly unsupported, and they sold like an utterly unsupported book sells. I
gotta say though, I actually have a copy of Witchy Eye. My mom actually has it. I knew you looked familiar, and so I actually looked you up, and I was going to ask you because I actually got it at a local library when we lived in North Carolina. My mom had gotten it for me, and as soon as you said it, my mom actually has the copy.
Very cool. Well, now we have.
I just want to clarify something. Hold on. Sierra, did you steal a library book? Is that what you're saying?
Okay, first of all, it wasn't stealing because I had so many late fees associated. I'm that kid that took out like 9 books. Okay, so I paid like 3 times the price of every book that I ever got. However, this was one of those that like the library, you know, they have those sales and stuff. My mom had gone in to pay for like my fees for the month, and like it was there in their I don't know why libraries do it, but like they do the whole selling thing, and it was there. And she was I love Scott Westerfield, and so she had gotten me the Ugly series, and she was like, the librarian recommended this for you. It's, you know, supposed to be pretty much the same thing. And I was like, all right, let's do this.
So librarian recommended. You now know.
It worked. Okay. I will say, I think she still has it because she like kept 90% of my books, but like I will be sending it to you because now I can say I know you and I can get you to sign it.
Yeah. Very cool.
Full circle right there. Full circle.
Okay. But that's Witchy Eye. So that's not the book that tanked. So the Random House series tanked, right? But in the meantime, so let's come back to Witchy Eye. This is good. In February 2012, I gave that book to Toni Weisskopf at Baen. We stayed friends on social media. I'd see her at conventions. You know, I pick up the agent. The agent gets me a sale at Random House, and I say to the agent, hey, listen. And my agent, and she is currently my agent, Deborah Warren, East West Literary. She's a kids writer. Like her big properties are Pete the Cat and Llama Llama. Okay. And I say, hey, Deborah, listen, I know you're not really an adult fantasy writer or agent. I say, if I go to the next Worldcon at the time was going to be in Spokane. I live in Utah. That's drivable. You know, it's like 15 hours. I'm a Westerner. You drive 15 hours for a good party. So I said, I'm going to go meet the editors and get their emails. I'm going to say I'm represented. And then you'll follow up. And that way, you know, you're not just like emailing a stranger or whatever. She says, okay, we'll do it. So I go do that. And I get, you know, Ann Sowards from Del Rey. And I meet, I don't remember, the couple different tour people. And then Toni Weisskopf was there again, of course, and stuff. And so we send out those emails. Hey, you know, here's the, and in the case of Toni, it's, hey, I'm following up. Dave already sent this to you, you know, almost 4 years ago. So in February of 2016, I gave for the book in February of 2012. In February of 2016, when I am down in Melbourne, Australia, in a hotel overlooking the river there, getting ready to go teach a client, okay, I get the email from Toni saying, I love this. We want to buy this book, right? So she had it for 4 years. So, but yeah, Witchy Eye did really well. Witchy Eye earned out in the first period. It's got 3 sequels. There are 2 more sequels coming. That's kind of my flagship series at Baen. It's an epic fantasy with a twist. I have a hard time writing anything that doesn't have some kind of with a twist. It's an epic fantasy set in 19th century America, or sort of a funhouse mirror version of America. So it starts in Nashville and New Orleans. Yeah. But yeah, so what question did we start with? It was like, how did you get into writing? Right?
I actually think I just asked you the name, and it's been going since then. But
so
wait,
it was
take a break. We have to take a break, CR, since we got his name finally out of the thing. So you have to hold it. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with Drinking with Authors.
Sample locally sourced, quality distilled spirits in the beautiful Columbia River Gorge. At Skunk Brothers Distillery, we're family-owned, brewing small batch grain to bottle spirits, just like our grandfather did back in the Prohibition era. From handcrafted bourbons and moonshine to flavored blends and cordials infused with local fruit. Join us for a tasting tour and buy Skunk Brothers spirits straight from the source.
It's all in the family at Skunk Brothers Spirits, located in Stevenson, Washington.
We're back. CR was gonna, after assaulting somebody for inappropriate drinkage, was gonna ask you a question. CR, what was that question?
Oh, no, I was saying that the original question was, like, are you being traditionally published right now, or are you going out to, like, do indie stuff? Like, are you doing it all yourself? Are you self-publishing? Like, what are you doing right now?
Yeah, so there's another part of the story, right? So, okay. So
we're back.
Buckling in.
I'm mostly not self-published right now.
Okay.
I'm at this point, I'm not self-published at all. Because so my Random House book was coming out, and I would go to, I live in Utah, and I'd go to our kind of local conventions and sell books. And I was trying, and with like friends. And one of the things we did that worked pretty well is with 5 friends, we started a kind of performance troupe. Okay, we're called the Space Balrogs, and we go put on these kind of improvised, semi-theatrical audience participation games.
So let me stop you real quick. So not only are you an author, you are a lawyer, you write songs, which I am expecting to hear at some point. I don't know if that was the right movement. And now you do comedy?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, jack of all trades, I got you.
Stuff, yeah. So we do that, right? To like trying to sell, trying to figure out how to reach readers, right? You guys, you have experience, you know this is tough. And so we would, as the Space Balrogs, we could get conventions in the area. They'd say, hey, sometimes they'd give us like a hotel room, but they'd never fly us or whatever. They'd say, hey, we'll get you on the schedule. You can have a table, maybe a hotel room, if you come to Emerald City in Seattle, Denver Comic-Con before they had to change their name, and in kind of regional Western con. So that was sort of working. And then Kevin Anderson's WordFire press booth was at Salt Lake City or Salt Lake Comic. They changed their name too. They used to be called Salt Lake something Comic-Con. I don't know. So Kevin was there, and Kevin has a publishing company called WordFire Press.
Yeah.
Okay. He's an author. He's got like 150 books in print or something insane, right? But he's also a publisher. And at the time, he was also a traveling bookstore. So they had this big bookstore there on the floor, and they had celebrity guests. I think they might have had Brandon Sanderson signing at their booth that year, right? Yeah. And I was like with my little group over in the corner with the 6-foot table, and there's the 6 of us. So I stood for the whole convention out in the aisle, and so I approached Kevin and I said, hey, listen, I want to be part of your operation. I want to pitch you on republishing my self-published books. And so Kevin did that. Picked up all my self-published stuff, put it out again. We've had a couple more books in the different series. So I'm with that indie publisher. In fact, for 3 years, I was their acquisitions editor. They needed someone to take up the role, and I said, look, I'll do it on a volunteer basis. And so I went and was an editor for 3 years.
Another thing on the list.
There we go.
I'm keeping track. You can't see my screen, but like I have check marks. Like,
yeah. I mean, my thriller, it's called The Wilding Probate, and there's one of the other Space Balrogs had started his own publishing company, and he's like, hey Dave, I really want to publish one of your books. And I said, well, there's this one. It's really weird because it's not fantasy, but they picked that up. So I've got kind of that set of stuff, 4 novels and a bunch of novellas, as well as a lot of short stories that are published in sort of the indie anthology space, right?
Yeah.
So I have a lot of friends and kind of, you know, contacts and connections in that world, which, by the way, I'm very grateful for. You know, it's well, now we'll see who I get to offend here. Time and again, I've got on like a panel at somewhere like, you know, a Comic-Con thing, right? I go to a lot of those, and I'll be on a panel with someone who is traditionally published and traditionally published only, and who got just phenomenally lucky and has no idea that they got phenomenally lucky. And they say things like, oh, well, if you're with a traditional publisher, you don't do the marketing, they do it. And I just want to say, except sometimes when they don't, like you're the one who won the Get the Publisher lottery, won the Get the Marketing Dollars lottery, won the Got Lucky and became a bestseller lottery, and you just think it's because you're good, and it's not. It's because you're just phenomenally lucky. And I'm grateful I'm not that. Like, I'm grateful that I have a perspective that there are people out there working their asses off for sales, and what it means to work your ass off for sales, right? And to talk to someone about your book, or to go make a contact with an editor, and, you know, stay in touch and plan projects. Like, I'm very pleased that's part of my author experience.
It's interesting you say that, because one of the things I always think is fascinating, and, you know, the entertainment world as far as TV and movies has changed a lot, but people talk a lot about the A-list actors and stuff like that, but they don't talk about the working actors that you see constantly on different shows and different pickup characters. And sometimes they never make any A or B list kind of status thing. They're never necessarily the headliner, but they work their butts off all the time. And I feel like there's a class of working writer that does the working part of the working writer, where it's not just putting out a book, it's going and meeting fans and meeting different colleagues. And there's such a great community of writers, for the most part. Most of them are not assholes, that you can meet and want to support each other and want to go, hey, here's and that's part of the reason we do this podcast. Like, here's my advices. Here's what worked for me. Because it's not going to work for everybody, but I agree with you 100%. Okay, so you go to conventions.
Yep.
Has anybody ever dressed up as one of your characters?
Not yet.
Yourself?
Not yet. Man, I really look forward to that. That may never happen. Yeah, I go to a lot of conventions. So until COVID, right? Corporate training. So I've been doing corporate training for about 8 years. I stopped being a lawyer. I'm still technically a lawyer, but I haven't had a full-time law job for 11 years. So when I went to kind of look for a full-time law position again, it was a bad market, and I found a job in training instead. Now, until COVID started, that meant a ton of travel. So the reason I could go to, I got this vehicle, Kevin Anderson's WordFire press booth, and later Kevin shut down his bookstore, but there's a
Bard's Tower
kind of
Alexi. I mean, we're yes.
There it is. So that's what Alexi is. Alexi basically bought Kevin's bookstore and carried on with it. So I had a vehicle, and I had tons of like airline and rental car points and hotel points, right? So two things. One, I could go to all these cons. I mean, you know, this year it might have been 5. Last year I think it was 2, but the year before was like 23, right? And the other thing I would do, and here's where being trad pub, this doesn't make as much sense for an indie author, right? But once I had kind of a couple of books out from Baen, and in particular, once Witchy Eye was a mass market paperback, I would travel to a teaching gig, and I would go to every single Barnes and Noble in that town. And I kept track. And by the way, when they shut down at the beginning of COVID, I had been into 46% of existing Barnes and Noble. It's over 300 Barnes and Noble stores I had been into.
Well done.
Wow.
Yeah. And I walk in and go look, see what's on the shelf, and take the books up to the front and say, hey, I wrote these. Would you like me to sign them? Cool. We'll sign them, put a sticker on them, turn them face out. And I brought a free book to give to somebody who's a member of the staff. Does anybody here read fantasy novels? Let me give you a book, right? So I did that, again, up until COVID, and then it's just completely shut down.
A little trick authors might not realize is that if you do that and you sign the books, they can't warehouse them back. They have to keep them. And
wow.
Yeah.
That's a good little loophole right there.
But the other thing is the other thing is, right, you're trying to, you get the book turned face out so the cover art works for you instead of spine out, so someone has to basically be looking for you or you're invisible. Right?
Yeah.
And by the way, here's one place where I got lucky. My name is Butler, right? So in the fantasy bookshelves, I'm next to Jim Butcher. And which is not a bad place to be.
Not a bad place at all, no.
So, but the other thing is you're going in there to make friends and and go and get some bookseller to like get, and this actually is better at indie bookstores where the employees tend to be more kind of mission driven, whereas at Barnes and Noble you'll get some of those folks who are like really passionate about books, but also you get some folks who just like, well, it was this or McDonald's. This paid 20 cents an hour more or something.
Yeah.
Right? So we're trying to activate those people as your allies. So this is like an answer to I'm answering the question, do I have self-published books, right? Was that the question?
Yeah, no, but keep going. It's fun. This is fun because you go on a whole like path. We're like, listen, we're going to the grocery store. We've hit Walmart, Target. Somehow we're in Dick's Sporting Goods at this point.
The
But the greatest part is he's not even drinking at this point. Like, this is him sober.
Yeah, this is me sober. So,
okay. Keep going.
Love it.
So look, I've had these kind of two, like it was really the indie side that got me into going to conventions and meeting a lot of people, right? But also a lot of networking. It got me into, in the first instance, into sort of groups, existing tribes like Kevin Anderson's Superstars group, or like the Storytellers in Utah, or like Dave Farland's Apex Writers, stuff like that. But it was like the combination of those things let me like go around and sign books in bookstores, and I guess if there's a moral, it's like and actually I think, Erica, you already said this, right? You said what works for you may not work for another writer, right?
Yeah.
I forget who said this. I read an interview where someone was talking about writers and said, and it wasn't a writer, it was somebody else, but they said the writers I know who have succeeded have each tended to make a writer-sized hole in the wall. Like they found a road that worked just for them, and the people who try it may or may not work so well. So you work with what you have, right?
And the question actually that spawned off of was, is anybody dressed up as one of your characters?
Right.
So I'm going to just say this right now. DJ is going to give 3 books signed by him for free to whoever shows up at his table at a con dressed as one of his characters.
I will give you 10 books.
There you go.
Dude, I'll do it.
10 books. Now, I went to mail them to you after, but I will mail you 10 signed books if anybody who shows up. Okay?
No, CR, you're disqualified from this activity right now.
That's not fair.
It is totally fair. You're not getting the free books. You've got a head start. Okay, you can do it. You can do it. Fine, I'll let you do it. Show up at the thing. But I think that's fun.
We're going to do a partner costume.
Good.
Yeah, let's talk about okay, rein it in. This is not your personal book getting show. This is C.R. Rice's How She Gets Novels to Read show. No, let's talk about fans then. So you're doing conventions. Do you remember your first interaction with a fan that came up to your booth and knew you and was excited that you were there?
Yeah, I do.
Well, tell us about it.
It was during that year, just after I had lost my first agent, and I was at a very small steampunk convention in Salt Lake that only ran like 3 years. I want to say it was called Steam Fest. That could be wrong.
Okay.
And running cons is hard. So the team the woman that kind of started, I think she struggled for a few years and then just said threw in the towel. But the writers that year, I think it was year one, and we were all in a hall. So like not like a hall, big room, like a hallway.
Yeah.
And the tables were just all against the wall, and I was sitting there. I think I was at a table with Carter Reed, the zombie junkie. And Carter does a daily zombie comic strip, and he sells a lot of swag, and he also does zombie portraits of people. And all I had out at that point was like the first 3 of my Rock Band Fights Evil serial, just kind of like punchy PG-13 short urban fantasy novellas about a damned rock and roll band. And this guy came up and said, "You're DJ Butler." And I thought, oh, he's surely mistaken me for somebody else. and I said, well, yes. And he said, "You rode Hellhound on my trail." I was like, oh, no, he doesn't know who I am. I signed his iPad with a Sharpie. He like had 3 or 4 authors because he read everything in ebooks. So I was like, okay, signed the back of his iPad. That was really cool. And that's you guys know this, right? This is the best moment, or one of the best moments in writing, right?
It is, because it to me, it's always that you hit a connection, because we write not only because we love writing and stuff like that, right? But we write to impact people. Yeah. Whatever the impact, whether it's making them laugh, in my case, a lot of times making them cringe and then tell me they want to punch me in the face, it's fine. But like, there's an impact that you have as a writer, and you hope and you go, gosh, I really hope people enjoy this. But even reviews and stuff, you kind of go, okay, but when that person comes up and goes, "Oh my God, I loved your story. This was so awesome," and tells you parts of your story you don't even remember writing because they loved it so much. Oh my God, it's one of the best feelings you can get in the entire world. The best.
I gotta say though, so as like an introverted author, that terrifies me. So like people coming up to you and things like that genuinely makes me concerned. Like I start panicking and I can't think right, and then I say something stupid. So like, how do you, as a person who is doing those things, when you did your first convention and you were talking to people, and for like new authors or even the authors that are kind of second guessing themselves at doing conventions, what is your advice for them as far as getting over the worry, the anxiety of speaking with panels and networking and just taking that leap into doing a convention?
So I wish I had really good advice. I'm an introvert by nature. Let me give you an example. So my first job out of law school is at one of the world's biggest law firms, and I show up on a Wednesday. This is in the London office, right? So like, here I am. I'm like 26. I don't know anything. Getting paid a lot of money. I have an office in London, and the partner hands me a phone number on the Post-it and said, and the name is, I don't know, Eric or something. He said, call this guy and ask him blah blah blah. I wrote down the number on the question. And I was so intimidated. I thought that I was going to call some accountant and ask him. I couldn't call him until Friday. It took me 2.5 days before I could finally call that guy and say, "Oh, when?" Well, I didn't remember what the question was. When is the audit going to be finished or something, right? I have the advantage that I went out and spent 11 years of a career where I just had to make myself learn to behave like an extrovert. And then afterwards lie curled up in a fetal position. I mean, not literally, but figuratively. I feel tired after corporate training too. I teach a 4 or 6 or 8 hour class. I feel exhausted. afterwards. Or if I stand on my feet for 10 hours at a con and doing panels, I feel drained. But here's the thing, you know, I just have to do something. Like, unless someone hears about your book, they won't read it. And so you have to have some way to make that happen. And if you have some way to make that happen that does not require you to meet people or communicate with them in some way directly, God bless you, right? That's wonderful. I've never figured out how to do that. My publishers do stuff, but it's never been enough to like to reach everyone I want to reach.
Yeah, you can't. It doesn't work like that. I mean, it works like that for like 0.00 something percent.
Right.
The reason CR is asking you this question is starting tomorrow, CR is doing her first convention.
Boom. What is it?
And that's why.
No, that's cool. I like being put on blast like that. That's super fun.
Well, you asked the question, my favorite little friend. You're good. But no, she's doing her first convention starting tomorrow. And I was like, you're going to have to go out and do this. This is shameless self-promotion is how you do it, whether you do it in person. I mean, COVID has changed that for a lot of writers. Or if you do it via Facebook or other ways, you have to communicate with people because you have no choice. Like, this is the world we live in. They want interaction. You don't get to be alone in a tower anymore and sell books from a distance, you know? That reminds me, how has COVID been for you as far as writing goes?
That's an interesting question. It's actually tied up with the corporate training thing. Last year, you know, March, really February, when all of a sudden we went from like rumors of another, I don't know, it's a flu, it's not a bird or pig this time, it's bad, I guess, right? And then suddenly it was lockdowns to, right? And corporate training basically evaporated. So I had a lot of time. Last year I wrote 4 books. I mean, I still wrote like just less, a lot less. So I wrote a 200,000 word epic fantasy novel and a 100,000 word science fiction novel and a 60,000 word kids novel and a 40,000 word novella and about 10 short stories last year. Now this year it came roaring back, and I've been like working about 150% of capacity on the training side, and other non-writing stuff has kind of blown up for me. So it's been a lot slower. I've written short stories this year. I've written co-written only 1 novel this year. Now I think, you know, basically this year has been so busy. I'm sort of dug out of the hole of last year. And so next year I can kind of hopefully slow down the training and write more, which is what I really want to do, right? No one's going to be like 10 years after I'm dead, Dave, he was my favorite corporate trainer, like this, right?
You don't know that.
You don't know.
Maybe somebody goes and is like, they ask you, how did you get here? And they're like, look, I had this super awesome dude. His name was Don.
You're so, you see, except my name's Dave. You're so optimistic. But
well, see, like Don, Dave, it doesn't matter because they're going to be like, his name, he was also an author. This is what it is. Because, you know, like people get older, they forget those things, but they're always going to remember DJ Butler.
I will.
They'll be like, all I remember.
In that rum and coke, or did you leave it just rum?
No, so let me tell you. So a few people know my husband. He thought he's kind of upset right now because I'm not watching Gordon Ramsay, who is his man crush. So he did, this is my cup, this was rum, and this was Coke. It was like Erica was here with me, making my drink for me.
I make great short drinks. Yeah, that's true. It's a true story. Okay. Because we're getting near the end of this particular podcast. What is coming out? I know. See how quickly it goes? This is fun. We have fun. We have another whole podcast to record, but it's fun.
Delightful. Yeah. I'll have to play something on the guitar in the next podcast for CR.
No, you have no idea. I have a list of questions and requests.
I will do it. Okay.
Yeah. She's fangirling. It's out of control right now. Okay.
I'm super excited.
Question before my final question. Pick one on your list. Go ahead.
Okay, so I will say, I told you I read Witchy Eye. I read the first and the second one, and I heard there's a third one. Is the third one the final one?
There's also a fourth one, but the third
okay, so when is the fourth one coming out?
That one's out. but there will be two more that come out. Number 6 will be the final. But the first 3 make a kind of a trilogy. So the first 3 will see a lot, like book 3 will see a lot of arcs from book 1 kind of come to a conclusion without resolving some of the biggest issues or the biggest, like, you know, plots. I'm working on 5 now, so probably 2.5 years until the last book comes out.
Okay.
UCR, just to clarify, is called Witchy Kingdom.
That's book 3.
Yes, but Witchy Eye, I absolutely loved Witchy Eye. I thought it's fine. We'll talk about this at a later date. I love the whole intro, just the vibe of the whole thing. I love that it's going on longer.
I told you cannot fangirl on the author.
I know.
It's going to be a co-host. I have warned you about that. Book 4 is called The Serpent Daughter, by the way, of the Witchy War series. Witchy War series? Is that what it's called? Yes, there we go. Okay. Do you want to ask another question? But you cannot ask a fangirl question. You just have to ask a question. This is why we can't have nice things.
What inspires you to write? Like, when you, regardless of what genre you choose to write, is there something particular that tees you off to start writing your next story?
So, so there's a medieval Persian allegory called the Conference of the Birds.
Okay.
And in the Conference of the Birds is this story in which the world's bird population are having a conference, and a strange feather falls out of heaven, and the birds kind of get together and debate and decide to go find the source of the feather. Now it's a poetic allegory for Islam, for the reception of a revelation and then trying to live it. But I think that's the best metaphor that I have found for my experience writing, which is to say, usually there at the beginning, there's a couple, there's just like feathers from heaven, where there's something, and I go, aha, that makes me want to write a story. And it can be different kinds of things. Now, let me talk about Witchy Eye by way of example, because Witchy Eye is actually, there were like 3 different, more than 3, maybe, yeah, at least 3 kind of like things that were in my headspace all at the same time. Okay. Mm-hmm. Thing number 1, I was reading my kids the Brothers Grimm fairy tales.
Love that.
Yeah, which are delightfully dark and gruesome. And I had read them before when I was younger, and I love the Brothers Grimm setting, right? If you read something like The Musicians of Bremen, and I always thought it was like just sort of a fanciful setting. But what I loved about it is you'd have like a guy with a gun and a knight with a sword, and there would be like a mayor and also the emperor. And I'm like, what kind of crazy place is this where all these people go together? Well, the answer turns out to be early modern Germany, right? Where you had all of these things. But as a kid, I had no idea. So I was rereading it to my kids, and I had, read more history in the meantime. And I was like, oh, now I see what this, right? This is like the Holy Roman Empire. That's where these stories come from. And I thought, I should write a fantasy set in the Holy Roman Empire. Because I like my favorite kind of era. I like to think of as the Froggy when a courtin era. I think it's interesting. I have maybe romantic notions about swords and guns before they became like so lethal, right? Like from a story point of view, a machine gun is usually not that interesting. It's really useful if you want to defend your hill against zombies, but it's not that interesting. It just fires a lot of bullets really fast. Whereas like a flintlock, you got to shoot one, and then you've got time constraints, and so it becomes more interesting. So I thought, my first thought was I should write like a Holy Roman Empire kind of story. But then also I was reading this book called Albion's Seed, okay, by David Hackett Fisher. It's a history book. It's about the early migrations, plural, migrations from England into North America. Because the basic point of the book is, we think about this like there's one migration, and there were 4. and they come from different parts of England, and they go to different parts of America. And that matters because because they bring with them different names, different versions of Christianity, different versions of the English language, different ways to eat and marry and build. And so he says, this was a great book. It's got 200 pages each on, first of all, the migration of Puritans from Southeast England to the Massachusetts Bay, and then the migration of Royalists from Southwest England to the Chesapeake, and then the Quakers who come to the Delaware Valley, Pennsylvania, and then he uses the term the North British border. Scotch Irish is also a very common, who come and basically they find the seaboard full of, white people, so they keep going until they get to the Appalachian Mountains, right? And I was reading that book kind of at the same time, and honestly, I had them as separate things in my head. But at one point, I thought, this book, Albion Seed, man, I'm a gamer too. I thought, man, I just wish gaming books were this detailed and interesting. I could use this information if, did my D&D manual had this kind of information about elves. How do they marry? How do they name their children? How do you get buried when you're dead? This is great. And then at a certain point, I thought, wait a minute, no, I should not be writing my Froggy When a Courting fantasy in Germany, about which I know relatively little. I should write Froggy When a Courting fantasy in North America, about which I know a lot. But there's one more feather. I know this is like a long. I've only given long answers. I'm sorry.
I appreciate this. We're back to the what is the name question. It's cool. Let's keep going.
Okay. It gives you more time to drink, right?
I appreciate.
So
yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
So here's the third piece, CR. So my oldest son, my oldest kid was a boy, and he in utero, he was pressed against the side of the womb, and his ear was folded forward. So he was born, he had one normal looking ear and one that was stuck, and it slowly folded forward. So even today, somewhat, if you look, you'll say, oh, he basically has one parallel ear and one kind of perpendicular ear. Right? And my second child, daughter, when she was a baby, a couple weeks old, really small.
I like that you did this gesture, which you have to watch the YouTube episode, as if that was that tiny. I like that.
This big.
Yeah.
This big.
This big.
4-inch baby. My brother was visiting us, and he was like rocking her in her car seat in the front room or something, and suddenly said, hey, wait a minute, I think there's a problem. And we go running in, and he says, look at her eyes. And her eyes were dilated to different sizes, which can be a sign of concussion, right? And so we're like, oh, doctor, we go rushing in. I forget what it's called. There's a condition, it's permanent. It has no effect other than aesthetic. She just has eyes that dilate at different rates. And so I started calling her my witchy-eyed child from when she was like 3 weeks old, right? And then my third child was born, and Emily and I both have sort of moderately curly hair. And my third child, my second daughter, has a fro. Like her hair is, it's from my wife's side of the family, and every generation there's like one, and she has it. It's curled, and so this is the other piece from heaven, right? So the story, the Witchy Eye Story, is about these three siblings, each of whom is born, now in the story I would say deformed. I don't think of my children as deformed, but right, one of them is born with an ear stuck the side of his head. And Sarah Calhoun, the witchy eye, is like, until she's 14, she has an eye that has never opened. That's just like, pustulent and nasty, and contributes to her real strong xenophobic and prickly personality, and then the third daughter's got this tangle of hair, and which is all tied up in their sort of magical inheritance from their father. And so that was it. Like when those three pieces were together, I was like, okay, look, that's more than enough. I'm going to write epic fantasy from this. These three children who are all sort of strangely deformed, like kind of in similar ways to my children, Froggy When a Courting North America. And then from there, it's mostly craft and kind of working out where do I want to get to? How is this going to go? What else do I need?
Okay. I love the fact that when any of your kids listen to the show, they're going to be like, Dad, why did you say I was deformed on the show? That's what,
like, what the hell, dude? People are going to be listening to this forever, and all they think of is,
you're deformed.
Okay. So what is the next work that is coming out that people can find?
Oh, yeah. So the next, I don't know, put my reading glasses on. So
I don't know why you did either, but you look very educated. Go ahead.
Oh, wait, I look more than educated. Look at, if you look at the side.
I like the glitter. I was about to say, I really like I'm digging the rhinestones.
I'm dazzled. I bought these at Walmart and they were closed in the box like this. And they looked very sober and like just, plain black. And then I bought them and all 3 pairs in the box are basically.
I gotta say, when you close it, I could see rhinestones. It's okay to make excuses. It's cool.
No, I'm down with it. I now have to share branding with like, the grandmas who like Pikachu or, kind of My Little Pony kind of theme club, That's,
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's okay. Again, we don't judge on this podcast.
We don't judge. I think it's awesome.
That's the kind of podcast I need to be on. So, I've got a science fiction novel coming out from Baen. I think May, but it's next summer. This is not the first science fiction I've written, but it's the first sci-fi novel from Baen. It's called Abbot in Darkness. It is about an accountant, actually. Yeah.
Riveting. Just
I'm captivated already. Accounting, yes.
So there is actual accounting. I did send the manuscript to a friend who is a CFO at a biopharmaceutical company and said, listen, I'm pretty sure the accounting is right, but can you tell me if I've done anything wrong here? He wrote back and said, you're good, the accounting all works. So, it's about a guy, he's young, he's just out of school, he's got a bunch of debt, married, 2 young kids, and he takes what looks like a fabulous job opportunity, which is on a planet 40 light years away from Earth at the end of a wormhole. And the planet is controlled by a company. The Saravar company controls the whole system. And people who go work for them get rich because which sounds great, right? Because they let their employees trade for their own account. And so the employees get paid a salary, but they also make a lot of money buying the local product and selling it on Earth, right? So he's deep in debt. He's got this family's got to worry about. He takes this great job and finds himself caught up in like gun running and corruption, and he can't go back to Earth. And so, how can he survive, stop the plot without corrupting himself? And really what it is it's kind of a science fiction, not exactly a retelling, but it's modeled on some of the sort of the setup is modeled on the East India Company.
Oh.
Right? Where Britain had basically said to this company, okay, you can own an army. And in theory, there was oversight from London, but it was 6 months or a year away. So there's no way to actually oversee. So there's a company out there whose only motive is to get rich, and there's nothing stopping it from getting really corrupted, right? And that's kind of the.
I like it. Amazon in space. I enjoyed this.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
So how do fans find you?
So I have a website. You go there, you can kind of find all of my books and stuff. davidjohnbutler.com. I've got a mailing list there. I'm not really in social media anymore. I was quite active, but I have deleted my Facebook account and my Twitter account is frozen. So, but I do my mailing list. You can join it on the website, davidjohnbutler.com /mailing list or something, but the menu's there, right? I pretty consistently mail every Monday. As a quick follow-up thing, CR said, well, this is like a whole other conversation, but just really quickly, one of the things that really ramped up during COVID as a way to reach readers, like we were talking about, is driving my mailing list. And one of the things I've done is I actually do book giveaways every single month, sometimes twice a month, with other authors. So we'll do like 5 winners. Each will win a stack of 5 signed books. So I give away books all the time.
No, that's a good way to do it. It's awesome.
People who enter, at least they want to read the books. They might not want to pay money for them, but at least they want to read the book.
No, totally. And trust me, beta readers, giveaway, all that kind of stuff is really, truly important. That is awesome. You are thoroughly fun to talk to.
Oh, this is such a pleasure.
Yes, we're going to have to do this again. I'll have to see about the co-host, though, and the fangirling. But other than, don't use sassiness right now. Anyway.
You're going to be great tomorrow, CR. You're going to be fine. Just make sure that for each of your books, you have like a very doughboy. You poke him in his belly and he goes, ah, right? Like you just want something where someone pokes you in your belly and you just say it. Oh, it's.
I don't like touching.
No,
I don't do touching.
Joking, touching. You mentioned have something ready to say.
I take things very literal. I'm not good with. I'm very literal. I don't do hypothetical things like.
Okay, you know what? I think we've had enough rum and not Coke on this podcast. Okay, DJ. Oh my God! I almost said Butler. I did say Butler. I said it right. DJ, it's fine. It's enough drinking on the podcast.
He's sober. It doesn't count.
Yeah, this has been Drinking with Authors, guys. I'm your host, Erica Lance. My co-host has been CR Rice. Our amazing guest has been DJ Butler, and we will see you guys next time.